Hello everyone, Gebatron here. In this video we're going to go over the starting policies for the two factions in Grand Tactician's The Civil War. If we're starting a campaign, we click on this button over here. It says Start Campaign, and here we can choose either side, either the North or the South, and you can see that down here there's different policies that pop up for both of the factions. It says choose up to 3 policies. So let's click over here on the North, and we have historical checked or historic checked, which automatically selects 3 of them for us. In the case of the North, it's Underground Railroad, Kansas a free state, and industrialization. If we click over here on the South, we get the Old Dominion, King Cotton, and Native Allies. But you can click this historic off and it'll automatically check this random one, and it'll either click these ones random for you, or you can click on them to deselect them, and then you have your pick of anything. In this beta version, however, if you click on the South over here and you click on random, you can't deselect these. You can click random a bunch of times to get them to change around, but you can't choose your own starting ones. I'm sure this is just for the beta version. I'm sure this will change in early access. Also, while we're checking this stuff out, if you hit spring of 1862 here, these policies don't change. They're the same for both factions, no matter what starting date you choose. We'll start with spring of 1861. So let's go through the ones here for the North. Underground Railroad. Support an abolitionist underground organization to help fugitive slaves from the South to prevent capture. Available slave workforce in slave states reduced yearly. Now I would imagine that affects the South's production capability and their income. Kansas a free state. Encourage anti-slavery movement in Kansas. Northern support in Kansas increases greatly, with support in free states improving slightly. Support is important to manage because the higher a state's support, the more volunteers and stuff like that you will get from that state. Let's move on here to Go West. Encourage people's movement to west coast of the United States. Northern support in Arizona and New Mexico territories increased significantly, and large-scale recruitment in California is made possible. Again, increasing support in states is a good way to get volunteers. Let's move over here to support abolitionism. Official support to the hardline abolitionists will make sure Southern sympathies within the northern states will be kept in check. Southern support in all northern states greatly decreased. There you have that. Enforce Neutrality Act. Enforce the 1794 Neutrality Act to prevent adventurers and filibusters to continue their endeavors in Latin America freely. Relations with European nations is improved. You can improve or hurt your relations with European nations, and European nations can be important. You can also turn them off, but they can be important because you can import weapons and things like that. So you're going to want to have good relations with Europe in order to be successful. Moving on, breadbasket. A policy for America to feed the world. Support in free states is increased. All farms will start the campaign with higher upgrade level, and relations with the Europeans are greatly increased. There again, that's going to help with your overseas relations. It's going to help with your food production. Let's move along to industrialization. All heavy industries will start the campaign with higher upgrade level. Union will start the campaign with more railroad lines built, and population is increased in northern states considerably. That's going to help with your volunteers. If you have support in those high population states, you're going to have more volunteers. More railroad lines built means you can move more units faster around the map, gives you more mobility. That can be important too, depending on how you plan on playing. Security measures. With increased security measures, the flow of weapons from United States armories to southern states is reduced, and the Confederacy will start the game with 50% less ships and weapons. I'd imagine that before the war started, the North and the South, they were all part of the same, Union. So, the the armies in the South, the people that seceded or whatever, had access to the same military hardware, at least at the beginning of the war, and it would appear that security measures here kind of changes that. Moving on to alliance with the natives. Approach the Native Americans to ally with them against the Southern Rebellion. This policy will increase Northern support in Indian Territory considerably, allowing recruitment from the Indian tribes living there. That's pretty self-explanatory. You can get more support, more volunteers. Union Pacific Railroad. Support the construction of Union Pacific Railroad, connecting the Atlantic and Pacific coasts, increasing trade with the western states. The game will start with Union Pacific Railroad built and Union controlling trade to the Pacific coast. I would imagine that this increases your income, giving you more flexibility, maybe unlocking more policies in the policy tree in the campaign if this is built. So those are all of the available policies to start a campaign with for the North. Let's move on to the South here. Let's go through all of them. The Old Dominion. To make sure Virginia will support the secession and eventually join the Confederacy, the Confederate capital city is moved from Montgomery, Alabama to Richmond, Virginia. Support in Virginia is greatly increased. If you're playing as the South, you're going to want Virginia on your side. It's got a healthy population and a lot of support for the South will mean more volunteers, something you're going to need as the South. Let's move on to Kansas, a slave state. Organized pro-slavery immigration and cross-border intrusion into Kansas territory. Southern influence is increased and Kansas will become a slave state. If you want to try and take Kansas away from the North without fighting for it, this is an option for you. Slavery to the West. Encourage pro-slavery pioneers to settle in Arizona and New Mexico territories. Southern support is increased considerably and recruitment in New Mexico is allowed. Once again, increasing your recruitable population. Apostles of Disunion. Official support to the pro-slavery fire eaters will greatly increase Southern support in all slave states, but will also increase Northern support in all free states. So you're going to get more support, but so is the North. Moving on to filibustering. Provide support to Southern incursions into Latin America. The Southern military experience is increased. Nicaragua and Cuba will be under Southern control, increasing trade and allowing recruitment. Here we're going to, if we choose this one, we're probably going to have a little bit more income, and we'll also have more volunteers to choose from. King Cotton. Supporting agriculture will upgrade all plantations, increasing support in southern states and improving relations with Europe. I assume that you will be able to trade a lot of this cotton over to the European nations, increasing your income and that ever important support going up within your faction's territory. Southern industrialization. All heavy industries will start the campaign with higher upgrade level. Confederacy will start the campaign with more railroad lines built. A population is increased in southern states considerably. That's something that would be interesting. What happens if the South tries to industrialize more than it did historically. Moving on. Arms agents. Organized movement of weapons to southern armories and forts. Amount of weapons available to Confederacy is doubled and Springfield weapon types become available for production in southern industry. That's interesting as well. Let's move on to Native allies. Alliance with the natives. Approach the Native Americans to ally with them against the northern oppressors. This policy will increase Confederate support in Indian Territory considerably, allowing recruitment from the Indian tribes living there. This is basically the same thing as the North. I don't really see a difference here. Some of these are like the polar opposite, and some are very unique. Anyway, moving on. Southern Pacific. Support the construction of a Southern Pacific Railroad connecting the Atlantic and Pacific coasts, increasing trade with western states. The game will start with Southern Pacific Railroad built and Confederacy controlling parts of trade to the Pacific coast. That's interesting as well. What would have happened if the South would have had more railroads? And they'll also increase their income from trade. So that's just kind of a look at the starting policies. There's a policy tree inside of the campaign for each faction as well, where you can expand on these, making choices as time goes on to either follow history or, depart from history and have your own unique playthrough. Well guys, I think that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed looking at the policies there, getting to read about them and maybe do a little speculation and maybe a little planning on your own. Which ones do you want to choose? Let us know down in the comments. Subscribe if you're into this content, like and share it as it helps the channel out. Thank you so much for watching.